Committee meeting, June 16th. I'm Councilman Tony Brancatelli, Chairman of the Development Planning Sustainability Committee. I would like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Brancatelli.
Here.
Cleveland.
Here.
Griffin. Hairston.
Here.
Bashir Jones. McCormick.
Present.
Slife. Mr. Chairman, you have
Thank you very much. Development Plan Sustainability Committee hearing is being held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration in accordance with Ohio's open meeting laws as amended by sub HB 197. This meeting is being held using the Zoom platform and is being live streamed on YouTube and on Cleveland's Channel 20. It also can be seen on Cleveland City Council website and from Council's Facebook page. In accordance with Ohio open meeting regulations as amended by sub HB 197, notice of the committee hearing was publicly posted. The committee hearing will be conducted as all committee hearings in accordance with the council rules and Robert Rules of Order. The chair will facilitate the meeting and call on persons to speak. If you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand option on Zoom. Please limit your comments to the matters before today's committee. As usual practice, any actions to be voted on during this committee will be done by voice vote, called and recorded by the committee clerk. Please note also that Council Rule 15 requires that all legislation be heard by committee and that members of the committee recommend whether the legislation should be passed by the full council. As is our usual practice, the vote to recommend will be done by voice vote and recorded by committee clerk as required by the rule. Rule 15 also requires a legislative report to the council, which in practice has included committee members' signatures of approvals on the legislation itself. For all virtual committee hearings, because the legislation would need to be signed virtually, the practice of signing legislation by committee members must be waived. The recorded voice vote will constitute the legislative report. We have a number of pieces, including a public piece this morning, which we will hear. And we also have a presentation by a number of organizations around the CARES Act funding that was approved last week. But I would like to get the public pieces first. On Ordinance 206, this is a public part of our public presentation for planning. Ordinance number 206, 2020 by Councilmember Griffin, changing the use, area, and height districts of parcels of land west of Mapleside Road to east of Baldwin Road as identified on the attached map. Map change 2608. Remarks by City Planning. Shannon, are you making this presentation? And Director Collier, I know, is on as well. Shannon, if you can unmute yourself.
There it is. Hello.
Gotcha.
Good morning. Sorry about that.
Good morning.
So this is map change 2608. It has to do with the proposed LIHTC project for the Schofield mansion, as well as the nursing facility at the bottom of the hill on Baldwin. It's really to correct a split zoning issue to allow for the demolition of the former abandoned nursing facility on Baldwin, as well as to allow for the rehabilitation of the Schofield mansion, as well with 60 units of low-income senior housing on the same parcels. And so just to give you an overview of this, the current zoning, as you can see in the dark brown and the tan, is the dark brown is multifamily, whereas the tan is two-family. And as you can see, that goes across the parcels, which splits it. And when that happens, the most restrictive zoning applies. So both of these, or all four of these parcels, would be considered two-family rather than multifamily, which, as you would know, does not allow the apartments, which would be allowed in multifamily first. So this is really just to correct this split zoning issue, as you can see here. So as you know, the Schofield mansion has been here for years. It's historic in nature, and it's just pretty much lied abandoned for the last several years. These are the existing conditions of the Schofield mansion, and why this project is so important for this neighborhood is to really rehab this and then add some new apartments, demolish the old nursing facility that you can see at the bottom of the hill along Baldwin in the lower left corner. And so this is really the main purpose of the rezoning. This is the former nursing facility on Baldwin. As you can see, it also needs the proposal is to demolish it and to rebuild new. So that's basically the proposal. We're just fixing a split zoning issue so that these and all of these parcels will be multifamily, so that the applicant can get the LIHTC funding that they need to make this improvement here in our neighborhood. Any questions?
Great. And Director Collier, you have a comment? If you, Director Collier, if you can unmute yourself. I think.
It's not allowing me to. You have to do it. Okay, now you can. Now
Oh,
I
yeah,
can.
you got
Okay.
it.
All right, so the
Thank
host
you.
had to unmute me. Yes, just a couple of comments about this. This zoning is extremely strategic and critical, as Councilman Griffin is aware of. We are doing significant work around the Woodland Hills Choice Grant Initiative, which we are seeking application to HUD for. And also this area is actually adjacent to that area. And this asset is something that the community feels very strongly about. So this zoning is just basically to reinforce and allow for the investment to happen on this site. So this is very strategic. It supports the transformation initiative efforts that we're working on. And I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director, and thank you for your ongoing advocacy and support as we continue to make significant changes in that area. This is the public comment portion, and there were two ways for the public to submit comments for the committee on this legislation. The first was via email for zoning comments, and the other was through a voicemail. Madam Clerk, did we have any public comments come in on this? Kimberly, did we get any public comments on 206-2020?
Go ahead. Mr. Chairman, no public comments were submitted.
Thank you very much. We will close the public comment portion of this for 206-2020. And I will open this up to council members. Councilman Griffin. Unmute yourself, Councilman. There we go.
You hear me now?
We got you. Fabulous.
I enthusiastically support this. This has been a project we've been working on for a long time. Now that we have LIHTC dollars, we can actually really start moving forward some physical improvements on the property. This zoning change is very important to that entire area in order for us to facilitate the type of development we'd like to have in that area. So thank you so much to City Planning, and I ask my colleagues to support this.
Are there any other further comments on 206-2020? I see no hands raised, no further comments. 206-2020, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Francatelli,
Yes?
Cleveland,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Hairston,
Yes.
Bashir Jones, Bashir Jones,
Can you unmute yourself, Bashir?
I've been unmuting myself. I
Good, okay,
got the same
great.
as everybody else. Yes.
Thank
McCormick,
you.
Yes.
Life.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, on ordinance number 206-2020, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Right, the thing disappeared.
That will close the public portion. If we can shrink that screen down. I think Shannon, if you can close
Trying to do
that
that.
screen.
Disappeared. Thank you.
Okay, next we have a number of ordinances from municipal services. And most of these have already been heard and passed out of municipal services. The first ordinance we have is 25-2020 by Councilmember McCormick, Cleveland, Bashir, Jones, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelley by department request to amend sections 50803, 50804 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended by various ordinances relating to the application for permits and permit fee and duration for temporary sidewalk occupancy permits for vending devices in the central business district. Is this being presented by Commissioner DeRosa or Director Sprans? If we can unmute their mics.
Not me, Councilman. This is Jamie.
Okay. Is this Director Sprans? I know, no, there he is. Okay, Director, welcome.
Yeah, apologies. The host was not allowing me to unmute. Yes, Councilman, or Mr. Chair and members of the committee, the purpose of this legislation is to implement a random selection process when using temporary sidewalk occupancy permits for vending devices. The changes will allow for a random process, for a more cohesive and fair process of assigning locations to both current and new vendors. And each application will be randomly assigned a location each year. Will limit to 5 spots per vendor per year. And it will ensure that all vendors have an equal opportunity to be selected for one of the locations.
This was heard and approved at Municipal Services. Is there any questions on 25-2020? I see no hands raised. 25-2020 stands approved. 26-2020 by Councilmembers Brancatelli, McCormick, Johnson, and Brancatelli by department request, authorize the Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit to the United States of America to encroach into the public right of way on East 6th Street by installing, using, and maintaining 12 security bollards. Dr. Spence?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yeah, the GSA is seeking an encroachment of 12 bollards along East 6 near this both sides of the federal building loading dock entrance. The bollards are part of security measure to protect the newly proposed guard booth from direct vehicle strikes. The location of the new bollards are offset from the current path of pedestrian travel and will not prevent public access to the sidewalk area. We do have consent from Councilman McCormick for this.
This piece also was heard on municipal services. Any comments on 26-2020?
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember McCormick. No further questions. 26-2020 stands approved as read. 254-2020 by Councilmembers McCormick, Johnson, and Brancatelli by department request, declaring the intent to vacate a portion of Gilbert Avenue. Remarks, Director Sprans.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Yeah, the VFW Post 2850 are formally requesting vacation of Gilbert Alley. The proximity of the alley presents a safety hazard to the veteran members and their families. The vacation would allow them to fence in the property and present a safe environment for their members. The fence has been given a permit and will be installed soon. And we do have consent from Councilman McCormick for this request.
Thank you very much. Councilmember McCormick, any questions on 254-2020?
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I see no additional comments or hands raised. 254-2020 stands approved as read. 338-2020 by Councilmembers Johnson and Brancatelli by department request to amend the title and sections 1 and 3 of Ordinance 1532-2019 passed December 2nd, 2019, relating to the authority to enter into a maintenance, inspection, and repair agreement and to issue an encroachment permit to encroach in the public right-of-way on Ontario Street with overhead bridge and 2 precast connecting portals. Director?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as a member of the committee, this is an amendment to the ordinance as stated. The amendment will change the name of the permittee, Quintus Landlord LLC to Cleveland Propco LLC. That's basically just all the amendment is doing. And we do have consent from Councilman McCormick for this.
Councilmember McCormick? Okay,
I think I'm up. There we go. Move for approval, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
thank you. Any other questions on 338-2020? I see no hands raised. 338-2020 stands approved as read. 353-2020 by Councilmembers Slife, Johnson, and Brancatelli by department request, giving consent of the city of Cleveland to the county of Cuyahoga for the improvement of pier repair on West 105th Street Bridge, authorizing and the director of capital projects to enter agreements and to apply for and accept an allocation of the county motor vehicle license tax funds. Director?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a 100% county-funded project. There are no City of Cleveland funds included in this project at all. It is a $1,250,000 project. The county is going to arrange for the preparation of plans, specifications, and reports, and supervision and administration of all construction, and will contribute all cost for the project. And the bridge improvements include the removal and replacement of the top section of the fifth existing pier on this bridge. Construction is scheduled to begin in July of 2020. That's all.
And this is in Councilman Slife ward?
Yeah, it's Councilman Casey and Slife, yes.
Councilman Casey and Councilman Slife, any comments? No hands raised, no further comments on 353-2020. Stands approved as read. Ordinance 354-2020 by Councilmembers Cleveland, Johnson, and Brancatelli by department request, giving consent of the city of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the state of Ohio to construct the improvements at the Kinsman Road and East 55th Street intersection and to authorize one or more agreements necessary to make the improvements.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a 100% ODOT funded project. There are no City of Cleveland funds for this project. The estimated cost of this project is about $400,000. ODOT will arrange for the plans and construction and pay, again, 100% of all costs. And the improvements include adding signals and detection, thermoplastic pavement markings, and other enhancement as part of ODOT's initiative to improve safety at the intersection on the highway safety priority list at Kinsman East 55th. And that's what the scope is, sir.
Councilwoman Cleveland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through the chair to Director Sprons, is there a consent required, for this project? I don't recall getting one or seeing one.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman. No, on these types of projects, councilwoman and members, this is the consent. So there's no separate consent sent from our office to the members on an ODOT project or a county project. This ordinance is itself the consent.
Okay, so through the chair.
With the alleyway of vacation that we just read for, which was in Councilman McCormick's ward, we would go and get consent for that from the council member before or during the processing of that legislation. But with these roadway improvement projects, the ordinance itself is that consent.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair to Director Sprons. Now, somebody needs to brief me on this. I know East 55th, I agree, is one of the most dangerous intersections in this city and probably in the state of Ohio, but I'll need somebody either from your office or you connect me to the proper person at ODOT to brief me on the project.
Yes, ma'am, we will do so. We'll arrange a meeting between you and ODOT and us and ODOT, I should say, me, you and ODOT. Yeah, this is ranked number 2 on the statewide 2018 intersection priority list. So you are correct. It's extremely dangerous and hazardous intersection.
Okay, thank you.
That meeting as soon as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director. Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you, Director. It's important that the council members be engaged both for business interruption as well as residents in the community so they can coordinate the timing and inform residents in advance of these. No further questions on 354-2020. 354-2020 stands approved as read. 355-2020 by Councilmembers Griffin, Johnson, and Brancatelli by department request, giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct the improvement at the Kinsman and East 93rd Street intersection and are authorized one or more grant agreements necessary to make the improvements. Director?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yeah, this is a $3.2 million project. It is 100% Ohio Department of Transportation funded. There are no City of Cleveland funds involved in this project. ODOT will arrange for all drawings and construction administration. The improvements include adding a left turn lane to the four legs of the intersection by widening the pavement on Kinsman Road, and the work includes reconfiguring portions of Ramona Boulevard intersection and installing new curbs and ramps, walk signage, pavement markings, lighting, and signals. And so these improvements are part of ODOT's initiative to improve the safety of the intersections on the highway. And the Kinsman East 93rd is ranked number 3 on the statewide intersection priority list. So it's right behind Councilwoman Cleveland's intersection there on Kinsman. So for this, we ask your approval.
Thank you. Councilman Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad that this project is moving forward. I have been in discussion around this project with several different officials at the administration. We really, and I'm glad he mentioned how dangerous this intersection is. We really might even need some temporary fixes like lights and other things because a lot of accidents happen at that corner. So this is an extremely important project, and we look forward to having my colleagues' support on this.
Thank you. Any further questions on 355-2020? No further questions. 355-2020 stands approved as read. 365-2020 by Councilmembers Johnson and Brancatelli by department request, giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct the improvement at the Orange Avenue I-77 ramp and East 30th Street intersection and authorize one or more agreements necessary to make the improvements. Director?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a $360,000 project. It is 100% ODOT funded. There are no City of Cleveland funds involved with this project. ODOT will do the construction plans and administer the contract. The work includes signs, signals, pavement markings, and these enhancements, again, are part of ODOT's initiative to improve safety at the intersections of highways. And the Orange East 30th I-77 entrance ramp intersection is ranked number 17 of need on the statewide intersection priority list. And this is also in Councilwoman Cleveland's ward. So Councilwoman, if you would so desire, we could also, in the same meeting with ODOT, go over this one as well, if you wish.
Yes.
Councilwoman Cleveland?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. Any further comments on 365-2020? This was also approved by Municipal Services and Properties. I see no hands raised. 365-2020 stands approved as read. 377-2020 by Councilmembers Conwell, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelley by department request. Authorize the Director of Public Works to execute deeds of easement granting to the East Ohio Gas Company and Dominion Energy Ohio certain easement rights and property located in Rockefeller Park along East Boulevard near East 105th Street, and declaring that easement rights granted are not needed for public use. Director?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yes, this is to authorize Public Works to sell the 3 gas pipeline easements. The pipelines are being relocated to East Boulevard in coordination with the East 105th Street rehabilitation projects. The Division of Engineering and Construction has approved the alignment and confirmed there will be no conflicts with the 105th Street rehabilitation project. And this is in Councilman Conwell's ward.
Are there any questions on 377-2020? This also was heard and approved on Municipal Services. No further questions on 377-2020. 377-2020 stands approved as read. Thank you very much. I think, Director, that covers all of your pieces.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. If it's okay, I could log off.
Yeah, yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Next up, we have three pieces for economic development. The first piece by council members Bashir, Jones, Brancatelli, and Kelley by department request, authorizing the mayor and commissioner of purchase and supplies to acquire and reconvey properties presently owned by the Inspiration Group Limited or its designee, Inspirian, they could be inspired, located at 3101 Euclid Avenue for the purpose of entering into a chain of title prior to the adoption of tax increment financing legislation authorized under section 570941 of the revised code. Director?
Thank you. This legislation is the first step in implementing a non-school TIF for the redevelopment of the 3101 Euclid Avenue building by the Inspirin Group. At the buildings next to the Channel 5 building and the Board of Elections kind of across East 30th Street there. So this is a new development group that we've been working with. The principals are Lemma Getachew and Gwinnett Indlale. And so it's a good to be working with a new group in Cleveland, although they have done some buildings in the area themselves for about 20 years. The property is about a little less than 90,000 square feet and has been vacant for 20 years. It's been thoroughly gutted and by the previous ownership, and then this group took over with to take a shot at redeveloping it. The program will convert the building into 91 units, a couple of first floor retail spaces, as well as restoration and of the parking deck. The project as a whole is about a little bit more than $26 million, a mix of private equity, private mortgage from Chemical Bank, and historic tax credit equity for the project. So this is a great project with a new developer, takes a building that's been long vacant off the market and reactivates it. And we're happy to see it moving forward.
Great, thank you. This is the first piece in the chain of title. This is in Councilman Bashir Jones' ward. Councilman Jones, comments on 460-2020? I do not see Councilman Jones. Are there any other questions or comments on 460-2020? Madam Clerk, did you unmute Councilman Jones?
We've asked him to unmute. He's not unmuting.
Okay, no further questions. 460-2020 stands approved. Thank you, Director. The next piece of legislation we have is 463-2020 by Councilmembers McCormick, Brancatelli, and Kelley by department request, authorizing the mayor and the commissioner of purchase and supplies to acquire and reconvey properties presently owned by Sustainable Community Associates or its designee located at 2410 Scranton Road for the purpose of entering a chain of title prior to the adoption of the tax increment financing legislation authorized under section 570941 of the revised code. Director?
Thanks. 464 is also this project. Do you want me to do them both?
Yeah, let me read 464-2020 as well. 464-2020 by Councilmembers McCormick, Brancatelli, and Kelley by department request, authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter a contract with Sustainable Community Associates or its designee to provide economic development assistance to support the development of Lincoln Building Project and other associated costs necessary to redevelop the property. Estimated cost $360,000.
Great.
Director?
Thank you. Thank you. So there's two pieces of legislation here. The first authorizes the entry into the chain of title, and the second authorizes a $360,000 partially forgivable loan to support this project. Sustainable Community Associates has been working with us on a variety of projects, largely in this corridor along Scranton Road for the past few years. The project itself is the fourth project that we've worked with them on. The Fairmont Creamery, the Ohio Awning Building, and the Tappan Building are also in this area and have been in a couple cases successfully developed, and in the case of the Tappan is just wrapping up construction now. This project is located across from the Fairmont Creamery. It's a $24 million project. It's a 83 apartment units and 6,500 square feet of commercial space. 25% of the units will be priced at a workforce housing level, so right in that 120% AMI range. The project is primarily funded through opportunity zone investment from PNC. In addition, a first mortgage from PNC on the project. They're also receiving a loan from the state of Ohio, in addition to our resources on the project. The TIF is a 30-year non-school TIF. The Vacant Property Initiative Forgivable Loan, $360,000, 180 of that is eligible to be forgiven upon the creation of 20 new full-time equivalent jobs at the site. And the remainder will be paid off over 5 years at the end of it. So in years 6 to 10. So this is an exciting project. It's really been great. A lot of the work that they have done, this group along that Scranton Road area, and the stretch as you go north from I-90 up and take Scranton into downtown, has really, I think, changed a lot over the last few years, in large part because of the work that this group has done. And we're pleased that they're continuing to invest in Cleveland and to support them on this project.
Great. Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a really exciting project in the Tremont neighborhood, and it's currently will be occupying a vacant lot that is, along the corridor close to the APL and other exciting amenities within the Tremont neighborhood. This project also went through our community process through our neighborhood, which we ensure that our community is aware and in the loop on what's going on. So this did go through our block club process with support from our block club, and they've also worked together with Tremont West Development as well as the APL to make sure that we were accommodating space needed for the expansion of the APL and some other needs in the neighborhood. So it is a great project. Sustainable has been a really great partner in the neighborhood as well. They're teaming up with the Block Club on supporting some funds to be available for community members in the neighborhood who need minor home repairs and can't afford them, as well as things like historic signage and otherwise. So they have, they live in the community, and they've also made sure to partner with the neighborhood block clubs and neighborhood residents to give back in addition to their high quality projects that they put into the neighborhood. So again, Mr. Chair, this has been vetted through our community, and it's been the site in this project has been a conversation probably for the last 6 years or so, in different variations, and so I support this legislation, and thank you for hearing it today.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm very familiar. It's just been pretty amazing transformation at that intersection to see all the amazing investment and taking an incredible amount of distressed properties and putting it back to productive use. I know that you have a pretty active organization and block clubs over there. So they certainly hold the developer as well as the leadership to a high standard, and looking for an amazing outcome here. Any further questions on 463 and 464, 2020? I see no hands up. 463 and 464, 2020 stand approved as read. Thank you very much, Director. And Director, I want to thank you also for the administration's leadership and helping businesses after the civil unrest a few weeks ago. I know there's a number of neighborhood businesses that are also looking forward to that support. So look forward to those applications coming out. I think the notice said that applications will be out this week.
Yeah, I think we've got an online platform we've been working with DCA and several of other partners on, and I think assuming there's no bugs in the system, that should go live today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
we have one more piece of legislation. I did promise Kevin and his team and others, Director Maness, that we'll be getting to you by 10 o'clock, but we're almost on schedule. So the last piece of legislation we have, Ordinance 411/2019 by Councilmember Griffin, establishing a moratorium of the review and issuance of zoning permits, certificates of occupancy, and other license or permit applications for small box discount stores. And there's a rather voluminous amendment to this legislation, and I'll read through this quickly. In the title, line 2, strike review and. Number 2, strike the first, second, third, fourth whereas clauses in their entirety and insert whereas small box discount stores means a retail store between 3,000 and 15,000 square feet that sells directly to consumers a limited assortment of physical goods, products, and merchandise, personal grooming and health products, household goods, and other consumer products, including food or beverages for off-premise consumption, most of which are sold for $10 or less, and that does not dedicate at least 15% of its shelf space to fresh food and produce. And whereas small box discount stores, as defined above, do not include stores that dedicate less than 5% of their shelf space to food sales, sell gasoline or diesel fuel, or contain a prescription pharmacy. And whereas the City Council desires to foster businesses that improve access to healthy diet by selling fresh and affordable food and produce, and to protect neighborhoods' economic vitality by ensuring a diversity of businesses with sufficient opportunities for independent owners. And whereas there is a proliferation of small box discount stores in the city of Cleveland, and small box discount stores continue to announce plans to expand in urban areas where they cater to low and middle income customers looking for discounted goods, and where there are often no neighborhood grocery stores. And number 3, strike the 6th whereas clause in its entirety. Number 4, in the existing 7th whereas clause 1, strike usually less than 15% of shelf space, insert no or very limited shelf space. Number 5, strike the existing 12th whereas clause in its entirety. Number 6, in the existing 13th whereas clause, strike line 3 in its entirety and insert of the issuance of certain zoning permits, certificates of occupancy, and other license. Number 7, strike section 1 in its entirety, insert section 1 that notwithstanding and as an exception to any provisions of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, and for reasons stated in the preamble, this council establishes a moratorium on the issuance of zoning permits, certificates of occupancy, and other license or permit applications to establish small box store as new use until November 1st, 2020, or until such time as the city has established regulations regarding review and issuance of small box discount stores. Whichever is earlier. Small box discount stores mean a retail store between 3,000 and 15,000 square feet that sells directly to consumers a limited assortment of physical goods, products, or merchandise, personal grooming and other health products, household goods, and other consumer products, including food or beverages for off-premise consumption, most of which are sold for $10 or less, and that does not dedicate at least 15% of the shelf space to fresh food and produce. Who from the administration will be speaking on 4/11/2019?
Yes,
Is that Director
Freddie.
Collier?
Yes, I am here. Thank you. And
Director
also
Collier.
joining me. Yes, how are you? So I
Good.
just want to provide some context with respect to this. We have been working with Councilman Griffin for the last year. Myself, Shannon Beatty of my staff, or I'm sorry, Shannon Leonard now of my staff, also with law. What's important about this legislation is that it's actually 3-pronged. The moratorium really puts a halt on the proliferation of small box retail facilities in our communities. It also allows for the time that it takes to very carefully craft legislation that's going to be effective, equitable, and fair. And one of the things that we're working on, which we'll talk about as we move forward, we have a meeting today, will really focus on distancing. This is not a witch hunt with respect to dollar stores, but it is a concern that has been raised by the community with numerous complaints to council and others. And I'm sure many of you who have dollar store proposals in your wards, witness the saturation of these facilities, particularly in low income minority communities. To exacerbate the issue, many of these stores are poorly maintained in some of these areas. So this is not just about the proliferation of dollar stores, but it's also about corporate responsibility. There are a number of dollar store chains that exist throughout the country who do a very good job One example I would like to highlight is Dollar General Markets in Nashville, Georgia, where they actually have full-scale grocery store facilities. The investment in the neighborhood is significant. The quality of the produce and products are substantial. So it's not just about the proliferation, but it's also about demanding the best possible products in our neighborhoods. This is very important. And you may see news articles or individuals who, we had an individual who spoke at the Planning Commission last week, who actually had the audacity to say that it's not about what the community feels. You know, we have a right to invest in cities, and yeah, you do. And we also have a right to legislate in a way that makes sure that the needs of our residents are met and that the issues that surrounds our residents are not exploited. So this legislation is much more than just this statement about the proliferation of these facilities in our communities. It has many more implications, and we hope that the proposal that we're going to be putting forth to you soon will be one that addresses the issue in a fair, equitable way, that protects our neighborhoods, and also does not send a signal that Cleveland is not open for business, because obviously we are. Because if you look at any map, and we can share this with you, the amount of these stores in our city compared to the county is tremendous. It's a huge difference. And we are not the only city in the country that's looking at this. So this is not a fight that we're alone in. There's a number of cities that are looking at this throughout the country. And that's the impetus for, or the why we think this is extremely important. And we're grateful for working with Councilman Griffin on this piece, making sure that our communities are respected and that investments are done thoughtfully, and that we don't see a oversaturation of one type of use. And keep in mind, we are trying to reinvest in our communities. We need our land resources in our business districts to create economic opportunity and entrepreneurship opportunities. And the over saturation of these facilities, we believe, creates a imbalance, for lack of a better word. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your engagement on this. You know, we've been working on this for a while. It's important, I think, as you're coming up with kind of direction on how these really are construed throughout our different neighborhoods is critically important. Councilman Griffin.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right. First of all, thanks for picking this back up. You're right. We've actually been working on this for more than about 18 months when we originally started looking at a report by the local self-resiliency group that started looking at how we can actually promote more grocery stores in the urban areas. And really that's what this is about. How can we make sure that we put zoning in place in order to promote a healthier business model? I will tell you that even though we're asking for a moratorium, which is very important, that we're focused on a moratorium until we can put some guidelines and zoning and other kind of issues in place that we'll work through with the city of planning. It's important to put a moratorium in place because quite frankly, these stores, you know, get permits on a regular basis in order to try to come into our community. And we want to make sure that we start putting the guidelines and the principles in place on how they're going to conduct business as they come in our community. I have concerns about security. I know that everybody will say, oh, this is unfounded. I would encourage all of my colleagues as others to actually pull the reports of calls for service. I'm concerned about security for the customers, but I'm also concerned about security for the employees of a lot of these small box retail stores because they oftentimes don't have security. I'm concerned about, you know, how some of their facilities are kept. I know that there are some, you know, some groups and some people that do a pretty decent job. I will tend to agree with Director Collier that Dollar General may probably be a step up than some of the other discount dollar stores or discount small box retail stores in our area in the city of Cleveland. But I think that this is an important piece and an important piece of legislation, because we need to make sure that whoever does business in our city, whether it be these small box retail stores, the convenience stores, or others, that we arm our administration with as many tools as possible to hold them accountable. Right now, I think we need more tools, and that's the reason why we want to pass this moratorium, in order for us to put the right tools in place to hold these businesses accountable. I will also tell you that Brecksville has put forth a bill that is very similar to ours. Akron has put forth a bill, and it was all based on what they originally heard in Cleveland. And then they moved forward and actually put something in place to regulate those small box retail stores. So Director Collier is right. We're not in this alone. Everybody is trying to deal with how do we provide the proper spacing and other type of things that we need to, just so that we could have a good business model. If these stores operate in a good business model, in a good fashion, in a good manner, they would have no problem out of me in this council. But quite frankly, unfortunately, the majority, as opposed to the minority, operate in deplorable ways in our community. So just want to make sure that I ask my colleagues to support this moratorium, and hopefully we'll get some guidelines in place in order to deal with them better in the future. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for your leadership on this. Council President Kelley, then Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to acknowledge the work that that Director Collier and everybody that's worked on this, Councilman Griffin, everybody's put into this. And I just want to make a couple points. First, I realize that moratoriums generally aren't the best path forward for municipal governments. But what I'm looking at this is the pause button. Like, we need to just kind of hit pause while we craft more comprehensive legislation that Director Collier referenced. And I think that's where we need to get. And I think this time period, while that's being crafted, is important. It puts a deadline in terms of coming up with the more comprehensive regulatory scheme for these types of stores. And it forces us to really come up with something better. So while moratoriums are never great, I think it's important now that we hit pause. We allow planning and council to come up with a more comprehensive scheme to move forward with. I also want to make the point that we as a council reached out to all of the operators and gave them every opportunity to improve how they do business. I think it's probably been, probably getting on a year, not at least 6 months since about half a dozen of us set up a meeting with the operators of some of these small box retailers. And even on the day of this meeting, we all went around and took pictures, and they didn't even clean up the day that they were meeting with the council and in terms of what these stores look like. So we cannot be accused of not doing our due diligence and not reaching out to the operators and not communicating. And I would agree that Dollar General is one of the better operators, and we've incorporated some of their suggestions in the moratorium and some of the amendments. So I think that we have done we've done a good, we've set forth a good process to get to the legislation that Director Collier referenced in terms of more comprehensive regulatory scheme for these. But right now, I think that this moratorium is important. I think that we have had the conversations, and sadly, not only were they not prepared at that meeting, they didn't put their best foot forward. They had their stores then. They haven't gotten any better since. They haven't used this as like, oh, wow, Cleveland is considering doing this. We really need to step up our game. That didn't happen. So I think it's important that we continue down the path we're going. I want to thank Councilman Griffin and everybody that's been involved in this piece of legislation. And I would ask everybody to support this moratorium, and also not just support the moratorium, be involved in the subsequent piece of legislation that's going to come forward that's going to be a more thoughtful, comprehensive approach to how we go about permitting these stores. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for your ongoing engagement. You're correct. We have reached out multiple times, have had multiple meetings with their attorneys, with their operational staff, yet they're still having issues about keeping our places clean, keeping them secure, et cetera. Councilman Joe Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with my colleagues as relates to this issue. One of the things that's really a challenge for me in my neighborhood, because we have several of these stores, is that we as a body had some kind of agreement. And can you explain to me, Mr. Chairman, exactly what that agreement was as relates to allowing these facilities to have liquor establishments?
Those were the cooperation agreements that we had done with the law department, that they would conform to certain standards within the community, whether it's keeping their premises clean, not sell underage, the typical types of clauses that we would have in a cooperation agreement for a liquor license.
Right. Well, why would we have a general cooperation agreement with them for liquor license and from the law department?
It wasn't a general, it was a cooperation agreement for each of the stores that we designated in each particular ward. And if they violated that cooperation agreement, then we could object to the renewal of their liquor license and have a hearing for them violating the cooperation agreement that we all put together.
Right. Well, here's the problem, Mr. Chairman, that I'm having in my neighborhood. Not only do we have some bad actors here, but they're totally disrespectful. I mean, in terms of keeping the cleanliness of their place, when you look around in some of these dollar stores, not only is it not clean, but they're having a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood and surrounding community with their garbage and trash and debris. And I've complained about it on a number of occasions, and it's fallen on deaf ears with our various different departments of health. Going out there and trying to get on top of it. In fact, our health department, in terms of doing what they're supposed to do with these stores, are so derelict that I've had to go and reach out to the managers of these businesses and knock on their doors and make phone calls and even travel long distances just to get someone's attention to clean up around their facilities. We have the ability and capacity, Mr. Chairman. We have the capacity, Mr. Chairman, as a city, to go and give them violations and to make them clean their stuff up. We're not enforcing our rules on the books. And in doing so, it has made neighborhoods like mine look horrible. It's brought the community down. And when you bring the community down and people see trash and debris all over the place, the first thing they think, wow, I don't want to move to that neighborhood. Wow, that city looks bad. And so in this case, I've had to single-handedly, Mr. Chairman, deal with these issues. And I'm frustrated as a council member. When I get on the phone and call up the health department and ask them to deal with something as big as debris all over the place or as small as debris just scattered out by the store, and they don't do anything about it. And I don't see the kind of enforcement that's needed. And Mr. Chairman, every year I sit at these committee tables talking about funding for the departments. And I ask each of the commissioners, directors, is this the amount of money that you actually need to do your work? And I've always get the line, yes, we got plenty of money, but yet that's not showing up in our communities as relates to the proper code enforcement that we ought to have. That's the first issue. The second issue, Mr. Chairman, that I have is the fact that they're allowed to get liquor license. We have allowed for them as a city to get beer and wine. And so now I got a number of beer and wine requests from Family Dollar, who is on 142nd Street off of Kinsman Avenue, who's been robbed several times. Debris is everywhere. The store is in a horrible shape. The employees were told that if they are fearful of their lives, that they can carry concealed weapons in order to defend themselves. And when I walk into these stores, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that's really horrible is this recording that comes on. It says that, our store is safe because we have security cameras all over the place. And the store on Miles and Lee Road has been robbed so many times that it surpasses the count of both all of my fingers on my hand and all of the toes on my feet. And so, and then I got a problem with the police not being able to get there on time until after the fact. And people, Mr. Chairman, has actually been killed in my neighborhood over this. And then yet I hear the silence of nothingness.
So I would suggest that, I mean, these are, well, first off, just to clarify, the city of Cleveland does not issue the liquor permits, and we do not have the authority to issue them. We also do not have the authority to remove them. That authority lies with the state. We only have the authority to object or support. And that's why we have a hearing for these particular liquor license. Secondly, the issue around cleanliness and safety, I think we can take that up on a separate hearing where we can bring in the different departments and maybe talk about a sweep or talk about some real specific ones. Today's legislation really is a moratorium on issuing new construction permits to get the attention that we understand kind of the regulatory side of what we can do on for these small box stores. So I understand and I hear your frustration around how they manage them, but that's, you know, we can take that up as a separate hearing.
And Mr. Chairman, I just, you know, and I appreciate your leadership. I remember when I was in the council before, you know, things are a lot different than it is now. And we had this person by the name of Sue Bumgardner, and it didn't matter. Sue Bumgardner shut it down. So we have the ability and capacity as a city to have the right people in place to help us deal with these issues and manage these issues. They're going to have a negative impact on our city. And we have enough liquor license in the city of Cleveland right now to drown and kill every man and woman in the city of Cleveland. We don't need any more. And so at the end of the day, we're sitting here and we're not utilizing our authority and home rule as a city to push back on the state. And so, you know, when Sue Bumgardner and then Mike White was the mayor of the city of Cleveland, I didn't have no problems. I would tell them that, you know, this place over here, we don't want any more liquor license, and they shut them down. And so in 8 years, I had 0 beer and wine permits put in my neighborhood. Now they're just running rapid. And so I get the same, you know, corporate speak that you just stated just now as relates to that it's just the responsibility, the state controls it. No, if the city wants to shut it down, the city will be able to shut it down. And Mr. Chairman, I'm just asking if you could work with me to figure out how we can deal with the oversaturation in the African-American community, because that's the community I'm in, of beer and wine permits on every whim at any moment, any time. Someone can just come in and put a beer and wine permit in our neighborhood and we have nothing to say about it. We just throw our hands up and say, oh, well, it's not our issue. I need your help and I need your leadership, because I'm trying to maintain a neighborhood and build one. And it is the last African-American community in all of the city of Cleveland that has some sense of stability left in it. Now the rest of it have stability, but it has a larger homeowner population, and I'm going to lose that homeowner population because of stuff like this. So I need your leadership, I need your assistance, I need your help. You've been here for a while, and then, you know, switching moves. You know, I still want to follow up with you on all of this tall grass that makes our city look abandoned. And I've sat here at this table talking about this issue. So in addition to what we're talking about here, we also need to deal with the abandonment of these vacant lots and this tall grass.
Thank you, Councilman. And certainly we'll work with you on this. I will work with our legislative assistant, Joe Tytron, to help put together a session on these small box stores and how we can better regulate them and enforce our codes.
And I thank you. I thank you for your leadership, and I thank you for Blaine's leadership, and I thank you for the president of City Council's leadership. But I'm crying over here, and I need some assistance, and I've had it now. And so I would love to work with you guys to craft something so we can deal with the oversaturation of these stores with the liquor license and the permits.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments on 4/11/2019? No further comments. 4/11/2019 stands approved as read. Thank you very much. That ends the legislative portion of our agenda. And actually, I want to say the more exciting part of our agenda today is really talking about the CARES Act, the funding to our third-party agencies, and the direction we're going with to provide the support under these dire circumstances that we're in today under the wonderful leadership of Director Maness. And I will turn the floor over to Director Maness. We have a number of guests in our audience and look forward to talking about how we can get support out there for our community as quickly as possible. Director, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Chair. Would you like us to start with the annual Plan Year 2020 Citywides and nonprofits, or with the CARES Act?
The 2020 should be pretty quick if we want to go through that.
Yeah, that I was thinking that as well. So I've got Commissioner Anderson and Manager Deborah Prater with us to help cover that. And I think we'll start with Citywides. And Joy, if you want to go ahead and take the lead and just review process and funding recommendations, and then Council can certainly follow up with questions.
I certainly will. Good morning, Council. The Department of Community Development is proposing to allocate $620,251 to 12 agencies who are providing direct assistance to low to moderate income residents citywide. All have been funded through community development and or city council in the past, with services primarily supporting home ownership and retention, home maintenance, and small businesses. The review process is the same as we have used in the past 2 years, with a committee that is comprised of representatives from City Council, Mayor's Office, and Management and Community Development. Proposals were scored on a 100-point scale that considered organizational capacity, community need, program impact, past performance. I will respond to questions if anyone has any.
Any questions on the Citywides? Please move on.
And you know what, I just want to point out one thing on Citywides, because I think it's important for some of the initiatives that we're doing with the CARES Act, is that we are, for the first time in some time, funding legal aid at $75,000 for in preparation for the right to counsel legislation. I'm sorry, the right to counsel support that they're starting to provide, ESOP for foreclosure prevention as well. Again, it's going to be considerably more important, unfortunately, because of COVID-19. And I felt like there was one other, but I'm blanking on it. So please go ahead, Joy. Let's move on to the next one.
Social service operating support. The department received 56 proposals requesting a combined total of $3,761,423. We are recommending that grants be awarded to 55 organizations. The line item for social services is $1,558,600. Plus, we are adding an additional $250,000 set aside for the youth initiatives that were launched by the department last year. Youth initiatives, we are targeting those funds to innovative programs serving at-risk youth between the ages of 14 and 18. We have a 100-point scoring system, again, similar to Citywides, and that is pretty much it. Nothing really significantly different in our review of these proposals over prior years, again, with the exception of the youth initiative. We are providing support again to the organizations that we funded last year. Their services are jobs, leadership development, career planning, and mentoring for the most part. And Councilmember
Thank you.
Brancatelli, I will respond to questions.
Thank you. Council President Kelley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on what Director Maness said. For the dollars that are going to legal aid to support right to counsel, that is in addition to what we're doing with United Way as well. So so that'll make our total contribution this year of 225, but it's not a part of that commitment that we have to United Way. Is that correct?
Correct.
Through the chair. That's additional from the CARES Act. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, through the chair to the council president. Yes, that's in addition to, that's why, we independent of, and again, it's hard to think of the time before COVID-19 at this point, but we were reviewing these proposals and wanted to support right to counsel, even knowing it was fairly modest to begin with, independent of now the growing need.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Council President. Any further questions on the social service side? Thank you very much. I know Joe Titron and others have been very involved in the scoring of this. And I know these are always difficult decisions, and especially now the need and demand is incredibly high. So thank you for your great efforts on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so then Chair, I'll start in on CARES Act. As you mentioned, there are several people on the call who will be happy to respond to questions. I'm going to provide an overview right now of our process and the awards, but Assistant Director Wackers has really led the effort to ensure that we've followed HUD guidelines and run an efficient process to get these awards complete. Maria Sosa, who is our Fair Housing Manager, has stepped up to lead as the project manager for rental assistance, and in what we think will be a much better and more integrated way of working on the front end with the entities that will be referring to the rental assistance program and helping to support it. Entities like Legal Aid and Frontline, which is Cleveland Mediation Center, and then downstream into the continuum of care, which helps obviously our homeless population and the prevention of. So it's a new model. You never want to let a crisis go to waste. It really helped us rethink about how we are supporting kind of this whole continuum of our most housing burdened and vulnerable residents. So they're on the call from our team. And then thank you to Councilmember Brancatelli to call in the big horses with Elaine Gimmel and Kevin Nowak from Eden and CHN, so they can, and I know they have team members on, they can field the questions about rental assistance when we get to that point. So we don't just have to be on the hot seat for that one. I'm very appreciative of that. But just to step back, just a couple minutes to review kind of how we got here. The allocation from HUD for COVID-19, and very specific that all of the funds would go to people who had been affected by COVID-19, generally loss of income or employment. The total coming to the city is $19,416,728, and we were notified of that on April 7th. We worked with partners like United Way, who helped us analyze data, polled many of our CDCs and nonprofit partners, spoke with many of you about what we were hearing in the community in terms of need. And it's not surprising to any of us now, but it was at that point that we really needed to rethink how we would be utilizing these funds. Traditionally, of course, we'd be looking at home repair and commercial revitalization and the programs we run today to get people back to work. But we had to retrench and realize that basic needs is what this $19 million needed to be focused on, that people needed to be fed. We needed to get food to people. Our seniors were in isolation. And then, and we'll go through the specific programs, and then clearly shelter was going to be and continues to be really the biggest issue. So we put a program together that we shared with you May 12th and issued RFPs for basic needs, homeless and special needs, HOPA, which is housing opportunities for people with AIDS, and rental assistance on May 13th, with just a 2-week turnaround for people to respond by May 27th. The good news there, I think, was the application was very straightforward, and most of the agencies, because they had engaged with us over the past month, were pretty prepared to get moving. But we did ruin everyone's Memorial Day weekend and do own that, so with apologies. So we had 54 proposals, which was really encouraging coming in. And we had, during that time, put together review committees of our teams within the city. And again, appreciate Joe Titron from Council joining us. And then outside experts like Cleveland Neighborhood Progress and Enterprise, who could help us evaluate the proposals efficiently. And so we had, groups and not just one person evaluating proposals. And then had recommendations the first week of June that we shared with the mayor's office and brought forward last week, which was awarding 47 proposals to 36 agencies. And you have all of that information, but I thought I'd share just a couple things with you. The proposals really, as we evaluated them, what was really most critical was that people would be ready to go as soon as they received award letters, which happened Friday and over the weekend. They can be reimbursed for services that either they had the staff on hand, had done this work before, or demonstrated that they could get moving almost immediately. Because again, our main aim is to make sure we're supporting residents as quickly as possible with these funds. You have the memo in terms of how we made selections and why we chose to work with certain groups. I'm not going to go through that unless there are specific questions. Director Collier's team really led the way and has been with broadband assistance, with Digital C, with the school system. And that's something that we're hoping that we can build on with some of the other entities that applied. But really, other than that, it was teams that looked at, again, people's capacity to move forward. And then referral services, which I mentioned before, most of the referral agencies, which was really encouraging, are providing significant services to residents today, which means that people are already walking in their doors, well, primarily now calling them or looking for them online, but they're comfortable with them. And that was the goal, is that this would help us outreach to the community. And to Councilman Bachir Jones' point last week, that they would know residents, that they would already have a sense of who needed help, and that they would be able to know that the agencies, frankly, that mostly we're funding are agencies that are already doing this work, but they're doing it at tremendous strain to themselves. And then hopefully now these funds, with the funds of the foundations and others, would help ease the way. So even agencies that didn't specifically say that they'd be working on rental assistance, like Legal Aid and United Way and the Spanish American Committee, the other referral agencies primarily will be able to be helpful in that way. And then I think it's worth mentioning that Historic Gateway, we were really pleased to see them also applying for referrals for business support, which Director Ebersol is primarily leading. And then, of course, rental assistance, the $11.3 million that's going towards that. It was very clear, and I think it's worth calling out, that this is a huge lift and something that Eden and CHN don't take on lightly, and again, puts a tremendous strain on their organizations to ramp to do this. And CHN is also working on that Little Lead initiative with us too. So it is not with a small amount of concern that we have in terms of ensuring that we are able to contract quickly with them and reimburse for funds, because they will likely be hit as soon as they open their doors with a very large amount of requests. So I'll wrap up there and ask you if you want a more specific overview of the rental assistance program. We can provide that. Otherwise, we can just open up for questions.
Yes, that would be great. from the early onset, council really were very supportive of the idea of making rental assistance the priority. And the administration and your department stepped up in a big way, actually far exceeding what the county's been proposing, but understanding the demand and need for that. So it would be great if we can have Kevin and Elaine give a few opening remarks and talk about what they've been doing previously and how they plan on engaging with this process. Whoever wants to go first, Kevin or Elaine, I'll let you guys.
Okay, I'll go. Mr. Chair, thank you for having us today, and council members, really appreciate your time, and also appreciate the time of director, assistant director, in working through this process with us. For CHN, I think all of you know us, or at least heard of us. We focus on the power of a permanent address. That's our organizing principle, and we really work to maximize housing stability and home ownership opportunity for all within the city of Cleveland and the Northeast Ohio region and now beyond. And at this time, we're asking for people to shelter in place. We're asking people to shelter in place in a scenario where a number of them have lost their jobs. They have had reduced hours, and from that creates housing instability. So it was very exciting for us to see the city of Cleveland put the stake in the ground that it did to help to ensure the continuing of safe, decent, affordable housing for the members of the citizens of its city. From a need perspective, it's an unquestioned number for us. We are property, we own property, we manage property. What we saw as we've seen an increase in need over time, an increase that started in the 20% range up to now over 30% of our tenants as of June 10th had not paid their rent.
What percentage of that was it again?
That was 30%, Mr. Chair. So, when we're looking at the approach here, something that we that really thought was well thought through was what was trying to reach all in our community. We need to make sure that we have an equitable and inclusive approach, having the referral agencies as well as other organizations who are working in the community, thinking through non-traditional partnerships, such as through Ohio Means Jobs, Jobs and Family Services, having access for all, including bilingual nature of our applications and work, will be incredibly important for us to reach all demographics and all geographies throughout the city. Our work will be data-based. We will be having a full tracking system that will have real-time data. We'll be sharing that system across CHN and Eden. This will allow for us throughout time to be able to share with the council and with whomever in the administration would be interested in understanding who we're serving, how we're serving them, where the hotspots are in terms of need. And it'll also allow for us to make adjustments over time if we see that one particular neighborhood or ward within the city as opposed to others are not accessing the services. The final thing I would like to say is that we are doing this at scale and we're leveraging other opportunities. So when you think about the partnership with Eden and what you've seen in the write-ups in terms of being able to cover across the spectrum of need, but then also thinking through CHN's platform. As most of you know, CHN provides a large amount of utility assistance throughout the city of Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, weatherization, others. And what this will allow for us to do is when people come to us, it'll allow for us to be able to assess not just for this current rental need, but then also other needs that the families and individuals may have with this. One final thing that the director mentioned earlier was she mentioned never waste a crisis. My favorite part of that quote is the second sentence, which says it allows for you to accomplish things that you never thought possible. And so, I think this is a good example of that between the work with the city as between us as organizations, the Eden, but then also the ongoing discussions with Cuyahoga County that would allow for us to create one platform across the city and the county, and also help to supplement the city funds with the treasury dollars that the county would bring to the table.
That's great. Thank you. Elaine?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eden is really excited to be part of this initiative. some of you may know us, some of you may not. We're kind of the best kept secret sometimes. We are a nonprofit, and our focus really is on vulnerable populations. So we work a lot with persons with disabilities, the homeless community, as well as people re-entering from incarceration. And so we probably serve over 4,000 households per year. We also own and manage properties, and we administer rental assistance programs. So we mainly serve Cuyahoga County, but we are involved in other counties as well. We were excited about the opportunity to work with CHN. We already have a longstanding partnership with them on the permanent supported housing projects and Housing First initiative. But because of the expertise that they have with kind of that emergency rental assistance, we thought, you know, partnering together, it's a large amount of money. It's a short amount of time to really get the RFP in and start the program. So really trying to focus on our areas of expertise, and that's what we're going to be doing. So I know CHN is going to be kind of the front door, and they're going to be making referrals to us for the ESG and home dollars. But we already administer ESG and are involved in home. So we will get referrals from them. We already are doing inspections. We already are doing rental assistance to landlords. And again, you know, we already have systems in place as well. We already enter into the HMIS system, which is a requirement of ESG. We already have our own database. We're also going to be sharing information with CHN through their system. So we'll be able to pull reports and give information about where people are ongoing with this program. We have been administering 2 pots of money recently since COVID started. We were approached by the Office of Homeless Services. The Ohio Housing Finance Agency had dollars available for the continuum of care. And I will tell you, we are working with a number of referring agencies that are already going to be referring for this. So I think a lot of partnerships already that exist throughout the city with Legal Aid and Frontline and Famicos and many, many other providers. But we have been getting quite a few applications. The need for rental assistance is huge right now. I can't underestimate that enough. We have already gotten probably over 130 applications for that pot of money, and that just started in mid-April. We also were administering some TANF funds through Ohio. Again, you know, these are only available to the end of June. We've received almost 400 applications for that. So the need is great. And because we already have systems in place, we will be ready to start July 1. We're using some internal staff. We're also going to be adding staff because we know the importance of getting things done quickly as we get referrals. We really want to make sure that people are able to be stably housed. We want to serve as many households, but we want to use the least amount of assistance. But housing stability is huge. This is a lot of money, and we want to make sure that we're using it wisely and keeping people in their units, or if they need to move to another unit. I think that because we have other resources in working with CHN, we'll be able to kind of spread the dollars further and help as many households through the city of Cleveland as possible. So again, really excited to be part of this. Even though it is a little overwhelming, we know that the need is great. And one of the reasons why we wanted to partner with CHN is so that we could get this started quickly to serve as many people that need to be served.
Great, thank you. I know you have a number of other staff online. If you wanted them to say anything at this point or go into questions, either Kate, Emma, or whoever wants to, it's up to you. We'll just go into questions. And one of the things I did, if you can also outline, you know, basically, how have you been managing the PRC program, and what has your engagement been with the courts in terms of the courts now opening back up again with Housing Court with Monet Scott starting through evictions? How do you insert yourself within that process, and how do the proceeds for rental assistance get out? Does it go directly to the tenant? Does it go directly to the landlord? Can you briefly describe both of those?
So to the chair, I think the goal right now is that the city and the referral agencies will be interacting most directly with Housing Court. Maria Sosa and Director Donald and I have had several conversations with the Housing Court. As you know, I think most of you know, there is a backlog right now of cases and a restriction on how many they can take. And so our goal and hope is that By the time they are kind of in that March, April timeframe, these programs will be up and running and people will understand that they can get assistance. One of the things that Elaine mentioned that I think is really important is Assistant Director Wackers has really pushed a shallow subsidy, meaning not covering necessarily the entire rent. We know that may be challenging, and we want to give CHN and Eden the ability to negotiate with landlords, but it also allows for, as people hopefully are not coming into housing court, but those who are already there, the ability to say, okay, listen, nobody can be whole here, right? We're in a really challenging environment, but we do also acknowledge the fact that many landlords or small business owners need to pay their mortgages, need to maintain their properties. And what can we do together to have the most impact from a community perspective, and not necessarily, pay the entire rent. But I certainly would like to give you guys the opportunity to comment, but I do think that that's more the role of the referral agencies to interact with housing court.
Great. Any addition to that, Kevin or Elaine?
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I think you had also asked a question about the flow of payments. So the payments would go to the landlord in these scenarios. And I agree with the director. I think it's going to be critically important for us to be able to leverage the resource as much as possible. The form that takes, we'll need to figure that out as we're rolling out the platform in terms of, the scale of need, the amount of rent that we may pay if we provide a prescribed amount, if it's a flexible amount. Through implementation of the program, we'll understand that better pretty early on.
And Director, the timing? Oops, I'm sorry. We're gonna get you back on.
To the chair. No,
Okay.
I put myself back on mute. So to the chair, award letters went out last week. But as we mentioned, Assistant Director Wackers and Maria have been working with CHN on Eden on how do we get contracts in place. They are gearing up. We are communicating broadly that July 13th is when they'll be accepting applications. As Kevin said, they really are expecting that some of the referrals will start coming in before that. They're somewhat already doing this work. Maria and Assistant Director Wackers might want to speak to some of the work they're doing with referral agencies, so that the calls and things that right now have been coming into the city, so we can start getting them to them and they can start getting applications ready. But overall, the communication from Counsel, and if you can share, is that the agencies should be ready to go no later than July 13th across the board.
And just a reminder, we do have a hotline, both a phone and as well as an email for folks. So we want to make sure we get that out there. I have Councilman Slife, did you have additional questions or were you good? You're good now? Okay. All right. Councilman Joe Jones, you had questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I am wanting to know what's the total cost of the first of all, I just want to thank the Cleveland Housing Network and the director for doing such a good job as relates to helping people who are in need. And wanted to know what is the total cost that's going to be administered into the program from the city.
So through the chair to the councilman, the total program is $11.3 million, and that's made up of community development block grant, emergency solutions grant, and then home funds.
What was it again? I didn't hear that last end.
$11.3 million.
11.3 million. And how is it going to be distributed?
It's, and it's probably more detail than I needed to provide, but we have 3 different sources of funds from HUD that we're utilizing, and they all allow us to provide different levels of support. But from a resident perspective, they only need to.
I can't. Hold on. I couldn't hear you, so I had to put on my earphones.
Of course,
so
sure.
that I can,
And all I was saying is that what's most important for residents is as they come in to CHN, and even the source of funds isn't really something that have to be concerned with. The total dollars would be utilized to provide short-term assistance, or if some residents do need more time to get their housing stable, there are other sources of funding.
right. Is there some area that Cleveland Housing Network could do some kind of work in our neighborhood? Because we have people in our community certainly now of need. And I don't know if they're stretched over there or Eden Corporation is doing anything in the Lee Harvard Ward 1 area, but I want to encourage their engagement over there as well. Well, are they doing anything, Director?
So if I could step in, that's one of the areas that we've talked about, of having a phone number and an email contact, so residents in all our wards can reach out directly and get in queue and reach out to these organizations as quickly as possible. So we'll make sure we distribute that information back to every council member.
Right, but do they do anything currently in my ward?
Yeah, and I'll let them speak to that specifically if they'd like to, but both organizations are citywide today and serve residents citywide. And one of the requirements of the CARES Act funding is that even though some of our agencies and providers certainly focus on areas of the city, that if any resident contacted them, they would support them.
And before they comment, who is the director of Cleveland Housing Network now?
To the councilman through the chair, it's Kevin Nowak, and he is on the call with us.
Okay, so how long, Kevin, Mr. Chairman, how long have you, Kevin, been the leader over the organization now?
Sure. Councilman through the chairman, July 1st of 2019 is when I became the executive director.
Right.
So just about a year.
Right. Normally, Mr. Chairman, the directors usually meet with the various council members. So that's the reason why I asked, how long had you been there? Because I know you had to be kind of new. So are you guys doing anything in our neighborhood, the Lee Harvard Ward 1 area?
We're focusing on the rental assistance and the CARES Act in terms of what development activities, what activities each of these organizations are doing within your particular ward. We can save that for another meeting, or if you want to set up a meeting with them directly.
Well, it was a question directed to him because we're talking about 11 million as a part of being on this body and approving that, overall. I'm just asking a simple question. Is he in my neighborhood? Because we need the same kind of services we're not getting in our community that other neighborhoods are getting, Mr. Chairman. And so I just asked a question. Is either a quick yes or no?
Yes, the Cleveland Housing Network is working citywide.
Right, I understand, but I asked Mr. Chairman to the director, you're trying to edit now. And it was a question from a member in good standing asking the director, are they currently right now doing anything in the Lee Harvard Ward 1 area?
Director Novak?
Yes, Mr. Councilman, through the chair, I can follow up with you. We serve citywide. We'll be able to identify whether, how much of our utility assistance, weatherization, and other programming is directly in your neighborhood. I'm happy to follow up with you after to talk about a number of things, including our new CHN housing capital, which I think would fit well to help with mortgage lending within your neighborhood.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allow me the opportunity to see the brand new director of Cleveland Housing Network, and I look forward to developing a good, long-lasting relationship because we need so much assistance in our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Director of Cleveland Housing Network.
Thank you very much. I think we have hit most of our questions from my colleagues. This is really an opportunity, I think, as you spoke about a crisis and how we connect our agencies to really work together to help work with our residents and get quickly assistance out there that we need for our neighborhood organization. So with that, if there's no other further comments, I appreciate your leadership on this, Director, and appreciate all the hard work your team is doing. I know getting these contracts done when you're only in the office 5 hours a day on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, hopefully we're going to expand those. So Mikkel doesn't fall off the deep end and putting these contracts together. And I know Maria's got a heavy lift, and appreciate her leadership on being engaged and taking the lead on the housing assistance program. So it's really important for our community. And having today's hearing, I've been getting text messages throughout the hearing on how people appreciate being out in front on this and having such a tremendous commitment to this. So thank you, Director. No further questions. I am calling this meeting to adjourn until next Tuesday. Thank you all very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.